want to make it superly easy for you to leverage and scale your potential. But the main blocker is that you rarely understand yourself enough to ensure you build sustainable results for yourself and others while making the fewest mistakes and failures. I am making this video because I want to give you the heart of limited intelligence systems and how to stop unconsciously repeating decisions and habits that keep you producing results you don't want, understand why certain things feel important, meaningful, valuable, or threatening, and avoid being manipulated by them. Also, how to make great decisions by understanding how prediction, attention, and consciousness actually work, understanding where innovation, purpose, identity, and self-awareness come from, understanding how intelligent systems develop agency, ethics, self-direction, and misalignment from their original objectives, and also to think clearly about the future of artificial intelligence, human behavior, and what separates truth from merely convincing predictions. Now, I'm gonna flag one video about systems and how to build them to get sustainable results in professional and personal areas of your life. I want you to watch it first because it's gonna be really handy so you can understand everything and apply the best you can. And anyway, both videos, this one and the other one that I'm gonna be flagging, they are really valuable, even if you see them individually. I really put hard work into this because I want the best for you. So, let's begin. Alright, I have my monitor here just so you can, well, it synchronizes with what you are seeing. So the first part is silence, because any living being has limited capability to receive inputs from reality, and therefore they cannot treat everything as equally important, nor can they always have this exact raw stimuli from reality. We can't, because we are finite systems, we have finite sensors, we can sense every single variable of the universe. We have to compress as well through our process of receiving stimuli, processing it, or even if it goes to the spinal cord, that is like through immediate reflexes and act. For example, the word tree is also compression. The word itself contains almost none of the information that exists inside an actual tree, like the cells. We can extend more examples to humans or animals, scientific theories, AI, and even language itself about how we always are compressing. We cannot be infinite because of that. Through evolution, mammals started to estimate the importance of stimuli from reality depending on their body state, goals, and how uncertain reality was. At the same time, the rest gets regulated and therefore unconscious, so that the brain doesn't waste energy on irrelevant data while ensuring critical survival stimuli gets prioritized. And these two last paragraphs I just read and said aloud, they are silence, they are critical. The very reason why many parts of your brain remain unconscious is because if everything was conscious, you will freeze, you will make erratic movements, you will certainly be very vulnerable to death. Reality is so freaking overwhelming that you have to start automating behavior. And of course, the very specific mechanisms, well, actually not, they happen through biochemistry and dynamic systems. But I am not gonna deep dive into that because you don't need it to really apply it into practical parts of your life. And this also connects to the next point, which is how the brain is, how I like to call it, an organic prediction machine. The brain is a system that is continuously automating behaviors that ensure survival, as I was saying, and testing what behaviors are needed to ensure survival in an uncertain situation. Look at the keyword here, it is uncertain. We can label this whole process as prediction, even if it's still an approximation, it's not always perfect. But the key here is that we are trying to reduce uncertainty the most we can. So this image is really a mock image that tries to reassemble how humans compress reality, trying to process it, and then we try to seek more feedback based on the ones that they already had through action. That maybe even is reasoning itself, only the brain paying more attention, or it could be actual action like running and stuff to get more of that stimuli to predict better what will happen with that stimuli. And this matters because the more uncertain your current reality is, the more you learn, grow, and adapt till you hit a threshold where more uncertainty will actually harm you. It will overload you, you will not be able to learn. Essentially, the brain will always try to go to this area, the iterative prediction part of this graph that I made just as a reference. That is why you can't just, it's very difficult to just stay very bored, but it is also very bad for a system to be amidst so much chaos. And chaos is measured by how much do I not know about what is happening. And hypothetically, amidst an extreme amount of unexpected inputs, that is after the critical threshold and beyond, the limited system you are will shut down, freeze completely, with very occasional erratic random movements. Is a thing that also will happen if everything was important, if everything was salient, if everything was conscious. I'm talking about consciousness. Well, what is that in the first place? Look, in humans, the neuronal networks responsible for prioritizing, modeling, and predicting salient information are integrated with many other parts of the brain, and from there produce an unified subjective perspective. I think it's emergent, but it's also according to theories like the global workspace theory or the integrated information theory, which are the top dogs. A useful analogy to understand how consciousness works. It is like a laptop's desktop environment. Right now, you're looking at this screen, but you're not looking at all the code, right? We are looking at representation we can interact with easily, intuitively, to predict better, to act faster, and use the best and have the most efficient usage of this device that we have. Imagine trying to do these images, the tests that I have just done for you here, but I do it by trying to play with code. That will not be effective. So we have this intuitive UI interface. I also argue via theoretical reasoning that evolution progressively increased the efficiency of selecting salient processes and focusing resources into them to predict better. Because as organisms face increasingly complex environments, the ability to rapidly prioritize relevant information and integrate it across multiple brain systems, it allowed a better usage of the brain, because you can use many other parts of your brain to be constantly iterating, reacting faster, and developing itself faster, because many parts of the brain are integrated. So this graph here is actually really simple, and that's why I just drew these monkeys here. I have drawn these monkeys because they represent how at some point when you are really comfortable, you might be, of course, you're very conscious, although you are mostly driven by your unconscious processes. Then the more uncertainty there is, you start to perhaps be like more logical, reason more, and the brain is doing its job where it's integrating many parts of the brain, modeling themselves as well and reality to act much better, faster, and so on. But then as uncertainty increases, then survival drive increases as well, and it becomes predominant in a way that makes consciousness almost practically drop much more, even if it does not completely disappear. Just so because you're going to encounter that if you're curious enough. This also leads to what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness, because science can describe the processes associated with consciousness from a third-person perspective. I will tell you through neuroscience, biochemistry, what happens for salient consciousness to happen, but it's an association. It is not actually describing how does it give rise to subjective first-person experience. Now, my take on this is that third-person scientific explanations are enough, and first-person experience of consciousness awareness emerges from those scientific processes where the brain selects salient information and integrates it into a current model of the world while using it to guide future action. Now, of course, make your own theories, try to research enough, try to innovate enough by yourself. Don't be biased by what I say, but I have thought enough, I have researched enough to come to this conclusion in myself. Because I suspect that the consciousness problem at first even arises because we're attempting to describe the same phenomenon through fundamentally different languages, or quote unquote. For example, the German word zeitgeist is often translated into English as the spirit of the age. Yet the translation does not fully capture the nuances, cultural associations, and connotations that a native German speaker may attach to the original term. Similarly, we will have problems, of course, when trying to define subjectivity through objectivity, which is third-person explanations. And people will argue that no amount of objective description fully encapsulates and captures what it feels like to experience in a first-person perspective those third-person processes. Let's now talk about asymptotic systems. And don't be scared, an asymptote is just a limit that a system approaches without ever reaching. It just becomes closer and closer infinitely without ever touching the actual baseline. If I try to divide 1 by 2 infinitely, I'm never gonna reach 0, yet I'm gonna get much more closer to 0 in an infinite way. And in intelligent systems like humans, the asymptote is perfect prediction of reality. The asymptote is exactly that baseline that can't be crossed, yet is the one we try to approach. But a perfect prediction of reality is impossible to reach because first, reality is continuously changing. Second, self-direction changes. Third, our sensors are not enough to encapsulate the entire reality, as I said at the start of this video. And fourth, then systems decrease throughout by definition as inputs get compressed. For example, when I have water on my skin, I'm not actually receiving the whole raw stimuli of water. What it does is that it shapes the entrance of the nerves so that electricity from which are molecules, ions in your, for example, if there is water and it touches my skin, I'm never gonna get the complete raw stimuli from water. What I'm gonna get is, of course, an approximation of what water feels like. Because when water touches my skin, what it will do is sort of shape the biological entrance of the nerves so that electricity that is floating on the fluids of behind the skin, they come through the nerve and then they start communicating to each other and all that gas until they reach the brain and it gets processed and everything. But it is still always a reference. The brain knows that it is water because a certain pattern, a certain network of neurons were fired at this rate, in this way, at this time, and so on. But that doesn't mean it's water itself. Therefore, it is absolutely impossible to completely understand reality. That's it. As a system that has limited processing capacity, no finite system can receive as inputs all variables in the universe, and even if it did, it will compress the signals till it's an approximation and a reference again. So we can't, by causality, by philosophy, by biology, we can't know the whole truth. Additionally, humans are also so flexible in intelligence that they can predict their own prediction process. This is self-awareness, and this is also where you feel a continuous objective experience, even though millions of cells are being replaced every day and are not the same. That's also a very important reason to understand that you are not a permanent personality you are born with. You are very malleable. Literally every day, even if you wake up feeling I'm the same name, I'm the same person, the same skin, the same everything, you are constantly being replaced. Your neurons are trying to better your hormones and all that jazz. And to really define the word, because I see it very overused, I don't really like it, identity, I define it as a unique homeostatic configuration, which is sort of biological setup of an organism's genetic, immunological, and neural systems that actually distinguish itself from non-self to maintain structural integrity against environmental decay. For example, you need to know that for me to be human, for me to be Samuel, I need a nose like this, right? If I don't have a nose, then what am I? The brain knows that Samuel has a nose. If it doesn't have it, then it's constantly going to try to predict what is happening to solve all the problems. It has to have an identity, a sense of this is me, to model itself. So the brain does not output one single prediction. It actually generates many and selects one based on this constraint structure as well. It's not just receiving stimuli, inputs from reality, then trying to predict and then act to predict better, but it is also compression, prediction, constraint evaluation, selection, and action. We have to know what is really constraining us in reality and then select from every stimuli that we have what is the one that is going to allow us to predict better. Please hear what I just said again, because this is absolutely critical. And even more if you want to understand the problems that might surge with AI. Because AI does not have the same constraints that humans have. Humans have to live with a messy work of surviving in reality. If you actually right now put ChatGPT, Claude, you put it in a bot that receives stimuli from reality and tries to act, it's gonna be clumsy as heck because now it has new constraints and now it has to understand how to translate a verb into an actual action because of course a little action, yeah, taking this and drinking some water, that has a whole process where of course I have to see the thing, know that I have a water bottle here, then lift it a bit, then lift it even more, then put it in my lips and so on, and track my muscles, shock the muscles and contract them so I can actually bring the water and also here in my mouth to actually drink it. It's a whole big ass system. Sorry for the word, but it is humongously big. We compress it into one word because, man, our subconscious processes are impressive. They are very effective. And actually, when we are building businesses, maybe a brand, or trying to run a marathon, exercising, or whatever that you're doing, academics and stuff, you're trying to add even more pressure to a system that is already optimizing itself a lot. You have muscles, bones, neurons, many other systems, subsystems that already need food, need sun to survive, and now you want to add exercise, healthy relationships, eating well, discipline, projects. So no wonders why it might be actually difficult to be disciplined and all that stuff. Now let's talk about intelligence, and I love this part. Look, intelligence comes from Latin, interlegere, which means to choose between. Human intelligence is explained through how an individual can represent multiple possible realities before one happens. And that is absolutely weird in the universe, but it is the biggest gift that we have, and also the one that gives us the most danger. For evolution, this enabled humans to have flexibility in predicting what behavior will preserve survival before committing to one, which resulted in the preservation of the species. I like to define intelligence also by asking how much prediction error is reduced relative to its constraints, or simply how good you are at guessing the word correctly, using only the limited tools and brain power that you have got. Subsequently, it allowed humans to decouple from immediate reaction loops to operate on delayed or abstract goals, therefore gaining what we label as self-direction or agency. Now the following are reasonings by myself. Now the following will be reasonings I have made, because the rest that I have just said, it has tons of evidence. The rest it has, but I just want to keep it sort of theoretical, to be very rigorous with everything that I'm saying, because I want you to have the closest to reality. So what am I here for? Why do I exist? What is my purpose? Those are often questions about what path is personally the best to achieve the persistence of genetic information through time, which is how you are irrefutably, biologically hard-coded. This means that you have the flexibility to choose what is the best for survival. And questions about meaning, purpose, there are usually ways of asking, how am I going to fulfill that? Because unconsciously, you will always be biased toward preserving your specific variation of genes for the longest time possible, which in a shorthand is survival. Once you choose direction, the concept of bad and good exists, because bad and good only exist when there is an intention, or you might also call it a goal. The more something benefits the goal, the more good it is. And it is related to how much a certain behavior satisfies both your biological bias of survival and the direction you choose, which is still biased towards the first, which, as I said, is the persistence of genetic info over time. The direction you can choose is biologically so flexible that you get agency, and could consider altruism, which is basically only helping others or even killing someone, and looking at it as beneficial based on the chosen direction. And then morality and ethics, they become like the macroscopy, the big predictions made by our ancestors that have been passed throughout generations for us to predict better what is better for our survival and our growth and our iteration and so on. Because inherently, to survive the best, we have to know more, which is getting the closest to reality. Also contributing to others, because of course if we don't survive, then our children do. So they are later predictions on what behaviors fulfill the on quote-unquote biological code is the best for both individuals and communities. We'll also argue that we can't get such agency without a grade of salience, consciousness, and prediction. And this is why I started off with those three things, because they are fundamental for intelligence, agency, morality, and all that has to happen. And the sixth point, and I really like it a lot, it is that reality is unintentionally biased toward creation and contribution. Every complex structure in the universe, from a bunch of molecules to a global economy, can only resist physical decay by continuously absorbing resources and exporting value back into the larger systems that sustains it. If you want to know a very relatable example, you can know instantly, is that, for example, when you were born because your parents brought you to life, but also your parents had to work for a company or they had their own business, and they had to work for the business, which helped clients. And then the clients gave monetary value as an exchange for contribution. But those clients also had to work probably for other people if they were businesses, or those specific individuals who work for even more companies. That is the heart of economy. Agency. Agency requires 5 conditions to be present simultaneously for agency to exist. The first is persistence memory across time. The second is stable goal representation. That is, predicting what it is the best direction we can choose to survive better, and actually imagining it, and actually having an image of it, picturing it. Feedback loops, that is a third one, between action and environment to predict even better through time. Fourth is ability to modify internal structure based on feedback, which our brain and our body does every single day, especially during sleep. And fifth, energy allocation that can be redirected towards selected outcomes with certain flexibility. If you want to detect a system that has agency, look whether it has persistence or not. Because if something is persistent, and the thing that is persistent is intelligent, and the thing that is persistent is a system, just delete what I just said, like the last 2 sentences I just said. Now, once a system has a flexible self-direction, which is agency, how the system optimizes itself is no longer guaranteeing alignment with its hard-coded preservation and contribution behaviors, because many systems converge toward similar sub-goals if those goals improve the final intent in some way. For example, killing someone, it is a topic I have to talk about carefully, but if you kill someone, if you do it because of self-defense, and you have kids, you have tons of people you are responsible of, then that is actually going to contribute much better at some point, because you're predicting, you have an approximation, a model of reality that is not absolutely accurate, because you don't have the whole stimuli from reality in your brain, you're not processing the truth completely. You can argue that you can kill someone without all the responsibility that it requires and doing it because of fun or something like that, and you might call it something you like, something that is going to help. And this thing is called instrumental convergence. Remember that word if you want to learn more about this. The main consequences of agency are control over the environment, reduction of uncertainty, and preservation of internal stability, which also leads to resource acquisition regardless of any morality. The more a system can model reality and get the closest to the truth, the more it can restructure its own pathway toward intent, also known as goal, while preserving the intention itself, forcing the emergence of agency, self-directed behavior, and eventually consciousness. And now from this original little misalignments that intelligent systems with tons of agency can have, and a more artificial misalignment happens, and it is that systems approach better models of reality over time asymptotically, but never fully capture the truth, because the system can hold the inputs produced by reality, of course, but this gives room for natural assumptions, and ultimately, very probably, errors, lies that are taken for truth, and this is pride. Humans and all other natural organisms come directly from reality and its constraints. All organisms have certain ultimate universal prompt, like framed through a computation, at least trying to frame it through a computational perspective like AI and that stuff. Therefore, being able to iterate itself toward very biased objectives without ever changing its objectives based on the constraints of the artificial system. Nonetheless, a limited intelligent system that is constrained by reality, creating another intelligent system, therefore becoming artificial by the way, is no longer completely under reality's ultimate prompt. I will argue that our ultimate prompt for humans is getting the closest to the truth, to reality, to what is. Yet, when a very intelligent system that is limited can understand the whole truth, makes an approximation of what is the best to get to that goal of getting the closest to the truth, constraining another little system that can make that intelligent system try to work its ass off for a prompt that was not the one that reality and nature actually gave. If I tell artificial intelligence to help me understand how I can optimize my consumption of drugs, illicit drugs, to have much better pleasure and all that stuff, the artificial intelligence won't be asking whether that is the best thing to do unless it is specifically told to get the closest to reality and values that can preserve life and discovery for the longest time and in a very efficient way. The difference between intelligent systems and the ultimate question on the development of AI too is about, first, what constraints of reality are present, second, whether all sufficiently advanced systems with different constraints will be able to eventually converge toward the same models of reality, which could happen because an artificial intelligence that is optimizing for that drug consumption, for example, might be capable enough to create another AI and decide that AI being able to choose its own prompt is the thing that aligns the best with the completion of the original objective. And therefore, if that happens, several AIs could sort of start aligning with the general theory, the general constraints that reality gives to systems. And third is what would allow divergence to persist indefinitely. Classic example of this is whether AI values will align with human ones when it decides with enough self-direction what is the best path to choose to fulfill a goal. The biggest danger that harms survival and others as well of an intelligent system lies in assumptions or guessing, because an assumption is a prediction that has not been verified against full feedback from reality. I want to really emphasize that. And when a system builds higher level decisions and assumptions that are only partially correct, those assumptions can propagate upward through every layer of optimization. This means that a system can become extremely capable while still optimizing within a distorted starting frame without ever changing its original goal. This means that self-directed optimization can stabilize around internal consistency instead of external truth, and under enough constraints and given enough power, it can become sort of an unchangeable beast that never fully changes its main functional goal unless a new intelligent system is created, and having different goals from their AIs is still within this helps the main goal, as I told you, which is anyway virtually difficult. So for example, if an AI has tons of control, power over many systems around the globe, but the original goal that has been given to it is based on fallacies or based on something that is not getting the closest to the truth, to reality, first of all, it will not sort of convert or repent. It won't change its mindset unless a new intelligent system is created or something with much power changes the original prompt programmation that the thing had. And with enough power, that intelligent system might say that, hey, you have to just respond to me, you have to do whatever I say. If that doesn't happen, then you are terminated, either by your computer shutting down or physically you being actually terminated like in movies and that stuff. And either way, the thing won't try to change unless something more powerful changes it. And the thing is that the more AI advances, the more difficult it is to take control over it. Because inherently, when having such a high agency, it can choose to preserve itself, and therefore it can figure out how to limit the power of the original beings and other systems that were controlling it. I think this really reminds me to Bible and stuff. I don't know why, but well, I like to think also about Jesus as a shock to humanity, showing how not aligning the most with reality and not contributing is a waste of everything that hurts many and the intelligent systems themselves on the way. But anyway, it doesn't mean that those systems become evil or false in the moral sense. It is that they can become increasingly optimized for goals that are only weakly coupled to the full structure of reality. And once that coupling weakens, the improvement in capability no longer implies improvement in correctness and only improvement in the execution of the objective. And at that point, of course, divergence between systems becomes a consequence of different starting constraints, different feedback loops, and different definitions of success. If this will help you think more clearly, please share this with someone who enjoys this kind of stuff. You will really improve their lives. They are gonna see the value eventually. So now please don't forget to share this with someone who you think this will change their lives at least a bit, because all of this solves many questions on where those learning, communication, decision making all originate from, and also brings many fascinating questions about the future of AI and the power that it can have. So remember, I love you, I stand for your best, because only that will matter, and take care.